Hello Tech Fam, welcome back to my channel, Family Tech. I am so glad you're here. While you're here, why don't you go ahead and give me a subscribe so that you can be notified of the videos that I upload every Thursday. I also upload throughout the week for different product reviews, but all the tech tips will be uploaded on Thursdays. So subscribe so you can be notified of those updates. Today I am talking about how to back up like a pro. So I have been in IT for over 19 years and I have done a ton of backups throughout my career. These days, our personal data is just as important as any of the data that you have at a company or corporate environment. So it is just as important for you to back up as it is for different companies to back up. So how do they do their backups? Well, let's get right into that.
Hello friends, I'm Sarah Kimmel, your friendly neighborhood tech expert. You can find me helping families with tech problems on TV news, podcasts, Instagram, Facebook, and my website, FamilyTechZone.com.
All right, welcome back. First, I want to talk about why you back up. So the reason that you're going to need to back up files is because technology fails. I know, it's hard to imagine, but it happens. And unfortunately, you can't predict when your technology is going to fail. So you need to have a solution in place to make sure that you don't lose any data when that technology fails. You know, some of the most notorious failures are hard drives, and that's where you're storing a lot of your data. So you want to make sure that all of your data, especially your important data, photos that are irreplaceable, you want to protect all of that information. So let me just tell you a quick little story about from my corporate IT days. Now, I was brand new in IT. I had just gotten the job. I was pulled over from more of a secretarial role and brought into the IT department because I was constantly proving myself to the IT department that I was capable of handling that kind of job. So I got pulled into the IT department. Within about 6 months, I was the only person in the IT department. So I kind of got my feet in the fire, so to speak. One day, one of the employees walks by my desk and says, "Hey, I can't access the files on the F drive." The F drive is where we kept all of the files for the whole company. This is a 200-person company. So I'm like, okay, I'll check into it. So I went on my computer. I couldn't access the F drive either. So I went into the server room, looked at the server, and there was some lights on that server that I did not want to see, which meant that my hard drives were toast. So I went back to my desk for a little bit and I cried because I was so new in IT and I didn't know how to handle the situation. So I pulled myself together, figured out, okay, let me look at the backups. Our backups had not run for the last 6 months. So obviously this wasn't necessarily my fault. I'm not the one that was setting those up, but it definitely was my fault because I should have been checking those backups. And I obviously wasn't because I didn't know that I needed to do that. Long story short, we had to send our server down to a data recovery service and paid $11,000 to recover the data. So this is my big plug. After that, I was a huge fan of backups and backing up properly so that never again would I have to pay a data recovery service. How does this relate to consumers? So consumers, they buy an external hard drive. They're like, oh, great, I've got all this storage. I can get it off of my computer. They put all of their data on a single external hard drive, put it in a closet for a few years and like, oh, I want to look at those photos. They pull out that hard drive and that hard drive has failed and their documents, their photos, all of it is gone. They can try and bring it to a data recovery service, but it's going to be thousands of dollars to recover that information. So you want to just not lose that information to begin with. So if you want to back up like an IT professional, there is a rule of 3 with backing up. The rule of 3 is that you should always have 3 copies of your data on 2 formats, 1 being offsite. So this is the rule of 3. So let me break it down just a little bit. 3 copies of your data. So that means the original plus 2 backups. So you have a backup stored here and you have a backup stored over here, and then you have the original. So you always have 3 copies of your data. So, you have a photo, you have the original photo on your hard drive or on your phone or anything like that. Then you have the backup, and then you have the backup of the backup. So 3 copies of your data. Second rule, 2 different formats. So basically you want to have them on, say the hard drive on your computer and a NAS. I talked about NAS in another video. Go ahead and check that out if you're not familiar. It stands for Network Attached Storage. So if you have a copy on your hard drive and you have a copy on the NAS, that would be 2 different formats. You can also count the cloud as a copy, so that would be a different format as well. So any type of media or anything like that, back in the day we used to put it on tape drives. Some people are still using some tape drives. Mostly we'll store it on a NAS device or something like that, or in the cloud. So that is the different formats. Last one is off-site. So a lot of people will just use cloud storage. That can count for your off-site storage. You basically just want to be able to have a copy of that data somewhere else, so that if your home or whatever gets destroyed, that copy of the data is still safe because it is not located in your house. So that's going to be one being off-site, because you want to make sure your backup and your backup of your backup are in different locations, because if something happens to the first, you want to be able to still restore from the other backup. So that is the rule of 3s. So the second question I get asked is, what should you back up? Obviously, any data that you want to keep, you should have a backup of. So this is going to be, especially for a home consumer, this is going to be your photos, your videos, any documents that you've created, any, homework assignments that your kids have created, things like that. Anything that you want to keep, you should have a backup of. So if you have files that you don't care much about, just download it or whatever, you don't need a backup of those because you don't care if you're going to lose those. So any data that you want to keep, you should have a backup of. So that's the what. You also can back up different things like configurations. So if you have something like a Griffin router and you have created all of your users and you've set up bedtimes and you've set up all of these things, you can back up that configuration and keep a copy. If you have to replace that in the future, you can just restore those settings. Other devices have, so if you have different scenes for your Philips Hue lights, you can back that up. Anything that has configurations, you can also back those up. You can also back up different social profiles. So you can request, say from Snapchat, you can request your data and you can download that file and you can store a backup of that. You can also request your data from Facebook, from Instagram, all of these things, so that you can have a copy of the data. So if anything ever happens to your account, all of that information is safe. So those are some of the other things that you can back up. Another thing you can back up is your actual computer. So you get a new computer, you spend a bunch of time installing different programs and setting it up exactly how you want it to be set up. And then something happens to the computer and you lose all of that information. So if you back up your computer, you can save all of that effort and all of that setup. So there's a couple different ways to back up your computer, and one is a full image backup, which basically takes a snapshot of exactly how the computer looks, how it's set up, and saves that information, and then you can restore that snapshot. Or you can do a file backup and just back up all of the files that you want. You don't need to install the programs again. You want to start fresh or whatever. So there's a couple different ways to back up your computer, but your computer is another thing that you might want to back up. And when you're backing up your computer, if you don't do a full image backup, there's a few other things that you might want to look at to make sure you're backing up properly, because a lot of times you'll back up your documents, but forget about the desktop, and you're storing a lot of documents or pictures or whatever on your desktop. So you want to make sure you back up the desktop. You could also back up your downloads folder, and you can back up different settings for your applications like Chrome. You can back back up your bookmarks and things like that. So, make sure that anything you want to keep, you've got a backup of. The next question I get asked is, how often should I be backing up? So there's two different terms that we use in professional IT backups. One is RPO and RTO. So RPO is recovery point objective. So recovery point objective is basically how much data are you okay with losing? So say you're working throughout the day and the last backup is at 9 a.m. and then it is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Another backup hasn't run during the day, but all of your employees have done a ton of work from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that's when the failure happens. You have to restore back to 9 a.m. and everybody has lost that entire day of work. So the recovery point objective is what you're willing to lose. How much data are you willing to lose? Because you have to store that data, so it's going to take up a lot of space. So you have to kind of weigh how much data you're willing to lose with how often you're going to be backing up. So say during the day when you're doing a lot of work and data is changing frequently, then you want to back up a little more frequently. But at night when hardly anybody is using the computers, then you don't need to back up as often. So the big question for you is, how much data are you willing to lose? So that's how often you should be backing up your computer or your files. If you can lose a week's worth of pictures or a week's worth of files or anything that you've been working on, then once a week is a fine time to back up. But if you are frequently using stuff, you're taking a lot of pictures, you want that data, you don't want to lose anything, then maybe a daily backup is more appropriate for you. So this is going to be up to you, but it's how much data are you willing to lose, and then that's how often you should back up. The second phrase is recovery time objective. Now this, I would say, is not as important for a consumer as it is for a business. So the recovery time objective is, how quickly can I be completely back up and running from a major hardware failure? And for a consumer, it's not going to be as critical. Your computer dies, maybe you have to run out to the store and buy a new computer. It's going to take you some time to get back to that functional state. But for a business, somebody who's losing millions of dollars every hour that they're down, their recovery time objective is a lot quicker. So different types of backups will allow you to recover that data more quickly. But for a consumer, I would say it's probably not as important that you're back up and running perfectly right away. Usually it's photos or videos, things like that. And you can go a week or so without that information. So recovery time objective is not going to factor in as much, but the recovery point objective for sure would factor in for you. So just think about those questions and what kind of storage you're willing to pay for, and then you can figure out how much you're able to back up and how often. So the next question is, how do I back up? You're asking yourself, Sarah, okay, great. I know I need to back up. I've got everything down. I know what I want to back up. So how do I back up? So there's a few different ways to get this done. First, there's the internal backups from different devices. So Android, iOS, they have their own ways to back up. You just go into the settings, type in backup. You should be able to find how to do that. So it's pretty easy to get those backups accomplished. And then iPhone, the backups run, it can be stored in the cloud, or you just sync it with iTunes and the backup runs on the computer itself. Then there's the desktop backups. So Windows also has a built-in backup and recovery program. Again, you just go to the start button, you type in backup, and you should be able to find that. It'll walk you through exactly what you need to do. Now, you will need to have a place for those backups to reside. Like I said, it can get fairly big. So an external hard drive is fine. Again, if you were following the rule of 3. So if you want to store your backup, like just your regular everyday backups, just on a standard external hard drive, fine, as long as it's also getting copied either to the cloud or to a NAS device or something else. If you're following that rule of 3, storing it just on a standard external hard drive is just fine, as long as there is a backup of that backup. Windows will walk you through that. Mac has something similar. I believe it is called Time Machine, so that you can back up any Mac devices. So those are the built-in programs. There are also a few backup software programs that you can purchase, and those will help you run backups more frequently. You can schedule these backups. You can also schedule backups that are built into Windows and into Mac, but this can help you with like incremental backups, because there's a couple different types of backups. There's a full backup that is just every time it's taking all of the files, it's copying, it's a full backup every time. And then there's an incremental backup where it's only copying up data that has changed. So any information that has changed, any files that have changed, any additional files that have been created will get backed up and added to that full backup. But you do still need to keep that full backup, and then you keep all of the incremental backups as well. That allows you to restore the whole thing, but it needs both parts. When you have continual full backups, you only need that latest backup. But that full backup can be very large. So again, how much space do you have in order to keep these backups, and what you can do with that space. With these software programs, they also sometimes have cloud storage capabilities. So if you back up through their software, they also make a copy of that backup to their cloud storage. You usually pay a monthly fee or something like that in order to keep those backups on their servers. It's going to help you get to that rule of 3 where you have a copy of the backup and then it is also copied up to the cloud. So there's your offsite backup. So I'll put a couple of my favorite backup software utilities down below. It does change from time to time, so I'm not going to mention them by name in the video, but go ahead and check out the description and you'll be able to see exactly which ones I currently recommend. I will keep that up to date when I do find different ones that I recommend. The other type of cloud backup that you can implement is something like Dropbox or OneDrive. With these backup solutions, you're really just backing up your files. It's not going to do anything for your computer itself, but it's going to keep a backup of your files always synchronized with the cloud. And what I actually like to do, this is legit how I keep all my files backed up. I have the copy on my laptop. It is synchronized with Dropbox automatically, so there's my offsite copy. And then I also have it synchronizing with my NAS device. I use a Western Digital MyCloud Duo. And when it synchronizes with the MyCloud Duo, I also have a copy of all of those Dropbox files on my local NAS device. Again, NAS, Network Attached Storage. So I have the copy, there's my 3 copies. I have my laptop copy, I have the copy that is in Dropbox in the cloud, and then I have the copy on my NAS, and they all sync automatically. So I don't actually have to run regular backups, because anytime I change the file, it synchronizes up to Dropbox, and then Dropbox synchronizes it also back down to the NAS device. I don't back up my computer itself, because when I get a new computer, I like to start fresh. I keep a list of all the programs that I install. It gets less and less because there's so many cloud services now that I utilize instead of actual programs on my computer. I do still install Adobe and I install Microsoft Office and things like that. But for the most part, I use a lot of web applications. So those don't need to be backed up because they're not installed on my computer. So I just know exactly what programs I need to install, and I like to start fresh, because if I've installed any programs as I'm testing things and things like that, I like to start just clean and fresh on a new computer. But you might work differently, you might have a lot of programs that you need to install, so a full image backup of your computer makes more sense for you. So the main thing I want to get across is that backing up is super important. Make sure all of the files that you want to keep are backed up properly. If you have any questions about it, definitely hit me up on Instagram. I am available on my direct messages on Instagram at any time. So find me over there. I'm at Family Tech on all social platforms. So if you want to hit me up on Twitter or Facebook or anything like that, just look for Family Tech and you will find me. Please subscribe to this channel. That definitely helps me out and I really, really appreciate that. Come and join my tech fam. I want you to understand and manage the technology in your home. So we will see you next Thursday and good luck.